Here we go. Now it's time to make this happen. And it happens with small steps. And the first step is the butt pull. So we're going to have Ian get to the butt pull position and start from there. I think, again, this is the linchpin position that could really accelerate his backhand's development if we can get him to understand the correct mechanics of the butt pull. So for Ian, let's go ahead and get him in his grip. And what I want to do is actually exaggerate. One technique we use for sometimes if you have a player that's really struggling to get to a certain position is to actually exaggerate and push them so far on the other side that when they come back to their normal stroke, it's not all the way back, but it's halfway between, and that's what we want. So as you saw in the video, Ian really struggled to about this position where he got to the butt pull, he starts pulling the racket around. So to really accentuate this, I want him, go ahead and let go with his hand for a second, I want him to really focus on having the butt of the racket up and the racket in this position where the strings are facing back this way. As we start going through the stroke, I want Ian to really focus on keeping, can you let go of the racket for a second?
Yeah.
Keeping his hand in a neutral position. Can you make a fist for a second? So as he pulls, he's pulling this way, and I don't even want him to kind of worry about rotating over, but I want him to notice the difference between, in the video as we saw, he's pulling, and you can really see how he's turning his wrist over and getting really tight. We want to keep his wrist in this nice neutral position. We're pulling up and finishing the swing. So can you go ahead and get back into that butt pull position? And I want him to see if he can really understand the swing. So this is a good position here, and what I want him to do is continue to pull the racket around his body. And good, so this would be contact. This is where I want contact. And so the key of the butt pull position is realizing that if you just pull the butt of the racket around, the racket face will get pulled into position. And where Ian before in this position, he's pulling, and to make up for it, he would launch his wrist forward. That was the kind of crucial mistake we saw in the stroke analysis. So the first thing we want to do is just have Ian shadow. Going through, really being aware of the fact that when he gets to this position here, his wrist shouldn't be popping forward, it should be in this nice neutral position. And as he's in the butt pull, the racket is a little bit lower. So go ahead and do a couple of shadow swings, Ian. Good, and then perfect. Exactly. Good. Take a little bit slower and we'll make a quick little adjustment. He can use his non-dominant hand. Go ahead, one more time. He can use his non-dominant hand to actually hold the racket and push it down into this position where we know the racket face is a little bit lower than the hand. So there you saw a little bit of where he's trying to pull it around with the wrist. Let's have him do it again. Again, keeping this nice and stable here. Good. So at home, if you were to make a change, it would start with shadowing the correct position. You can really tell how he's being really methodical about not going too fast. The faster you go, the more than likely you're going to go back to your old habits, and we don't want that. We want to develop new habits. And for you to develop those new habits, you have to be really focused and be really conscious of what you're doing. So he's doing a great job of that here. Okay, so now we've worked on shadowing, and this is one of the elements you have to work on. Ian's been really good about being super methodical, of taking his time and developing the new muscle habits that he's going to have to do to change his backhand. This isn't easy. How does this feel to you? Does this feel very...
It's super different, yeah.
Super different.
I've never taken my racket back to that position.
Exactly. So at home, when you're going through creating a new position, if it feels different, that's probably a good thing because it's not your old habit. If Ian were to say, like, this feels super normal, then I would be really concerned. So what we're going to have him do now is we're going to test out what he's doing, and we have Kirby videoing. At home, you could just simply use a tripod, a basket, or whatever it takes. Don't be limited by the equipment or lack of that you have or don't have. Just figure it out and video. So Ian's going to go through 1 or 2 shadows, and then I'm going to do a drop feed, and then we're going to go back and check the tape, the video, to see how he's doing. As he continues to shadow, he's focusing on not popping the wrist forward and having a good finish in this position. And as I drop the ball, I'm not concerned with the result of where the ball's going to go. I'm simply giving him some awareness, a way of checking, a litmus test to how he's doing once he gets activated by the ball being tossed. Okay. Okay.
God, do it again.
You can tell that he feels some resistance about what he's doing. Go ahead and...
You want a shadow?
one shadow, and then we're going to do one hit. Okay?
Just lift.
I feel like that was a much better rep because he's really focusing on not the habit of the ball. Okay, so this is the moment we start to use video to go back and see what you're doing. If you're not using video, how are you going to tell? Do you know what you did? Let's kind of like, and you're very experienced. You do this as a living, so it's kind of funny. This is interesting being in his head. How does it feel being the student? Can you tell if you did something different?
The first rep I over-rotated. The big question mark in my mind is, did I leave my wrist neutral or not? That I'm actually not 100% sure on.
Okay.
To me, it felt like I did. But I know from a lot of reps with students that anything less than this probably feels neutral to me. And so if I was a little beyond neutral, it wouldn't surprise me at all. But rep number 1, I did second pull. Rep number 2 was pretty good execution. Rep number 3, I got the yips on the way up to the ball.
Okay, and so Ian, to give everybody a good awareness, he has tons of awareness because this is what he does all day. He's referring to rep number where he's talking about pull 2 is creating topspin that we saw with Roger Federer. So as we start going through it, let's see. Actually,
which rep is this?
This is rep 1. So
I'll take that, but it's not neutral, but it's way better. So that's right in the ballpark of what I was thinking. You can see right before
we got a little bit of turn.
Yeah,
but in general, this is a lot better than.
Yeah, I'll take that all day.
So the two things I want you to look for that's already kind of taking place is that with Ian's racket in this position, now his racket's actually coming, the racket's slightly coming up through the ball now, where it wasn't before.
Yeah.
The other thing is we're looking for the fact that the C of his wrist pops forward through the shot. So a little bit. So what you want to do at home, if you're going through this same back and forth, it's a back and forth of continuing to do shadowing, check video, and then go back and see if you can shadow more to create more consistent habits. So now we're going to go through one more round of shadowing and getting some camera footage. It's really important that, yeah, this might seem a little slow at times, but this is the exact process if you want to make improvements and make a change to your game, what you have to do. Again, Ian's shadowing, we've checked the video. He saw kind of little things he did where he popped the wrist forward a little bit, but it's still a lot better. We continue to refine it until we get it to a acceptable level. And what I mean by acceptable level doesn't mean it has to be perfect, but we definitely want to see that at least 60 to sometimes 70% of the time he's executing the stroke correctly. Once we know that we're at that 60 to 70%, then we might move on to broaden the stroke a little bit. But it's super important that you stay very narrow. Again, I know some of you out there right now are going, well, Kevin, why don't you work on his feet? Why don't you work on his hips? Why don't you work on this? Why don't you work on that? We can always work on those things, but if we don't have a solid foundation of working on one thing, the linchpin thing in a stroke, then what's going to happen is you're working on all these things that seem like in your mind it's getting better, but in the end, when the ball really comes, you won't have the true muscle memory and the habits built to make it happen. Ready? And this is let me have you shadow one.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm having him shadow, because I noticed a little bit, even not looking at the camera, how his wrist popped up on that one. So I want him to re-engage with what he was doing with the correct stroke before. You can really see how he's really focusing. Go ahead and shadow one.
For my body, that fire is hitting. Like that is the mechanism of hitting. So yeah, if I was spending an hour on this, I would spend a whole lot of time just right in here.
And you can really see how he's recalibrating what he's normally used to doing compared to what we're asking him to do now. Okay, and this is now where we go back and check the video. Thank you.
I think there's one or two in there where I stayed pretty neutral. I don't think any of them are perfect, but that's better.
That's better.
Yeah.
You can really see now he's achieving the butt pull position and is developing the habit.
It's just a tiny
bit. He's developing the habit. And even there we see a little bit of the face where he's not quite hitting the mark. It's better. And so you can see that there's definitely some progress. And the way we go back, if you're using an app like Coach's Eye, is that I'm continuously going back and checking some of his original footage to see as we make progress. So this is what he was doing before. You can really see that. And this is what he's doing. You can definitely see he's doing a little bit more brushing, which isn't a bad thing. It's kind of a progression of it. But you can definitely see how there's a little bit more of him having the straight arm where, I'll show you here, this is extended where this is bent because he's cocked the wrist forward. So there's definitely some progress, and that's a good thing. So give you a little high five on that. Yeah. But this is the process. I wanted to go over it because I think it's so important. Now, we're not going to go through the full process, but you can take this step by step and go through that laundry list. First of all, we're working on the butt pull. So Ian might work on this for however long it takes to get that. And once he feels comfortable getting that, then we might go to pull 2, which is something we talked about as we were doing the full analysis. I think it's really important to understand that it doesn't happen overnight. And even with Ian here, who's helped tons of players improve their strokes, to learn a new stroke, it's not about knowledge, and I think you kind of quote that, it's not about knowledge, it's about executing and developing that muscle memory. What do you think?
Yeah.
Habits.
Yeah, you can watch videos all day long and soak in information all day long, but without training the body, it's really kind of useless. So this is a perfect example of that.
Yeah. So if you want to get a full breakdown of how you can train your one-handed backhand, make sure you go to onehandedbackhand.com and get our action plan, which takes you through the gambit of all the things you need to know to hit a great one-handed backhand. Thanks for watching.
Buttpull.com.